Story 1. My birthday is on December 28th, and for as long as I can remember, my parents have consistently overlooked it. Every year, we usually visit family who live 4 hours away during the holidays, either right after Christmas or the weekend following it. As a result, my birthday almost always falls during these family trips. Sometimes, the timing isn't too bad, like when the 28th falls on a Friday or Sunday, and the family celebrates Christmas on Saturday. But even then, my birthday is barely acknowledged. At most, I might get a quick, happy birthday from someone. And if others overhear, they'll toss out a half-hearted greeting before returning to discussions about Christmas dinner or the excitement of watching the younger family members open their piles of presents. Over the years, I've subtly expressed my frustration about this, though probably not as directly as I should have. But this year, it has reached a point where I feel I need to speak up. To add some context, my family's pattern of disregarding significant events isn't limited to my birthday. When my wife and I announced our engagement, my sister decided to announce hers shortly afterward and scheduled her wedding in the same year as ours, just a bit later. Many family members traveled across the country for her wedding, but didn't make the effort for mine. My sister, whose birthday is in early January, pretends to relate to my experience, but it's not the same. Her birthday has never been overshadowed by the celebration of a figure considered significant by many around the world. Mine, on the other hand, feels perpetually lost amidst the remnants of Christmas. Here's how my birthday usually plays out. We visit family the first weekend after Christmas and stay at a large house where everyone gathers. On the 28th, someone might wish me happy birthday in passing, and if others hear, they chime in. But the day quickly shifts back to being all about Christmas. Discussions revolve around dinner plans, opening presents, and celebrating the kids, leaving my birthday as an afterthought. I used to brush this off, content with a simple, happy birthday. But as time passed, the lack of effort from my family began to sting. Watching others receive attention and gifts on my birthday, especially when those gifts were already abundant from Christmas, felt hurtful. This year, Christmas falls on a Wednesday, making my birthday land on Saturday. A Saturday birthday should be special, but in my family, it's the designated day for delayed Christmas celebrations. I remember the last time this happened. My wife made every effort to make me feel appreciated, but my family turned the day into just another Christmas gathering, ignoring the fact that it was my birthday. Knowing the 28th was a Saturday this year, I made a clear request to my mom. Could we schedule the family trip for the weekend after my birthday? I even emphasized that any day other than my birthday would be fine. My wife chimed in, reminding my mom that it had been over 5 years since I'd had a proper birthday celebration. My mom seemed to understand and assured us she would try to accommodate. Then, a few days ago, my mom called to say my sister could only bring her stepson on the 28th, so they would likely go up that weekend, and we would visit the following weekend. I felt a little disappointed, but was relieved that I could at least have Christmas with my parents, celebrate my birthday with my wife, and see extended family later. Today, I stopped by my parents' house, and my mom brought up Christmas plans again. She mentioned that they had decided to combine the trips into one and would go with my sister on the 28th. My heart sank as I realized she had chosen to organize the family Christmas celebration on my birthday, the one thing I had specifically asked her not to do. She explained that the entire family, including my uncles, aunt, and cousins, would be there on the 28th. It felt like a flashback to my wedding, where my sister's plans overshadowed mine. Once again, my birthday was disregarded, and my request to celebrate on a different day was ignored. This isn't the first time my mom has done something like this. She has a pattern of disregarding my wishes just enough to make me look ungrateful if I speak up, but significant enough to let me know my feelings don't matter. My wife describes it perfectly. Your mom knows exactly what she's doing. She makes small changes to your requests, so you look bad if you complain, but it's still clear she doesn't respect your wishes. I decided not to attend the family gathering this year. I made a promise to myself not to let them rope me into another celebration where my birthday is completely overshadowed. At least I'll be with my wife, Even though we're on a tight budget, she's promised to make my 34th birthday special, especially since my past 5 birthdays were ignored or uncelebrated. I believe her. All I need is for her to say, "Happy birthday," and as long as I wake up next to her, it will already be the best birthday I've had in years. For those who think 34 is too old to care about your birthday, let me tell you, you are special, no matter your age. The day you were born matters, and to those with birthdays near Christmas, I see you. Even if your birthday often feels overshadowed, you deserve to celebrate yourself. Take a moment for yourself, reflect on your importance, and make your day special in your own way. Story 2. In celebration of the good fathers out there, let me share the story of Harry, a man whose questionable life choices make me wish I could deny the genetic connection we share. While he is technically my father, he never truly earned the title. Unfortunately, since I cannot erase his existence, I'll share my burden with you. Buckle up, because this is going to be a long one. Harry and my mom married in the 1980s, and to this day, I wonder how he managed to win over someone as incredible as my mom. She was a supermodel-like powerhouse, while Harry, was Harry. Mom wasn't particularly eager to have children at first due to personal circumstances, but Harry couldn't wait to be a dad. After 7 years of back and forth, my sister Christy was born. The joy of parenthood seemed overwhelming, and soon after, I came along 3 years later. However, managing 2 young children with both parents working proved to be challenging. Things took a sharp turn when Mom became unexpectedly pregnant with my brother, John. Realizing they needed help, they hired Ellie, a 17-year-old nanny. Unfortunately, Elle had a long-standing crush on Harry, who, in his mid-30s, should have known better. An affair began. Mom, trusting and unaware, suspected nothing even as Harry spent hours on the phone with Elle. After John's birth, Elle became his godmother. Not long after, Harry presented Mom with divorce papers, revealing the affair. To make matters worse, Elle was my mom's niece. Thankfully, as Elle matured, she realized the implications of staying with Harry, especially if they were to have children, and she distanced herself from him. Divorce proceedings were messy. Harry tried to undermine Mom at every turn. He falsified income reports, made unreasonable demands, sold off valuable equipment from their shared business, and hired an attorney who prioritized billing over doing actual work. Custody became another battlefield. Harry only wanted custody of Christy, as she was out of diapers. Mom refused to separate us, especially after witnessing Harry's lack of attentiveness when Christy once asked him for juice, and he ignored her. Mom's instincts proved correct. Harry was not fit to parent. He also refused to pay child support, despite keeping the shared business. The judge ruled against him, and Mom won full custody. Harry contested this in higher courts but lost repeatedly. He even attempted to make us, his children, pay for the legal proceedings. Other highlights from this saga include Harry falsifying income reports by omitting details of a months-long sick leave after breaking his leg, attempting to shift company debts onto Mom to reduce his financial obligations, contending every addition or correction Mom made, resulting in an overwhelming amount of paperwork, which she kept as evidence, using Elle's expenses as an excuse for his financial struggles while avoiding his child support responsibilities. Despite all this, Mom remained steadfast. She ensured we could contact her during visits with Harry and insisted he spend time with all 3 of us. After the divorce, we began visiting Harry every other weekend. Initially, these visits were enjoyable. We played games, watched movies, and even bonded with our cousin, who often read us bedtime stories. However, things changed when Elle left, taking her cat with her. Soon after, Harry met Eris. The name is fitting. Eris brought discord into our lives. She already had a daughter she left behind and disliked our presence from the start. Over time, she convinced Harry to pay less attention to us and criticized everything about me and Christy, from our weight to our hair. Eris's controlling nature made visits unbearable. She would start major cleaning sessions on Sundays to hurry us out of the house. Christy eventually refused to visit Harry at 12, leaving John and me to endure Eris's presence. Our situation worsened when Harry and Eris moved into a smaller apartment. Our designated space became a glorified closet. Gone were the days of bonding with Harry. We were confined to a cramped room, with little more than a computer for entertainment. When I turned 12, I wanted to stop visiting too. But Mom didn't want John going alone. Christy agreed to alternate visits with me until John turned 12. As a teenager, I struggled with anxiety and depression, later diagnosed as undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The stress accumulated, leading to a year in psychiatric care. While Harry was initially involved, he soon stopped showing up. His absence hurt deeply, as it felt like abandonment at my lowest point. Harry's indifference became clear during a phone call with John. They discussed the annual summer cottage trip, and Harry casually added, "Oh, I guess she can come if she wants." That was my breaking point. I decided not to go, and more importantly, I chose to cut ties with Harry entirely. He tried calling on my birthdays, but I either didn't answer or kept the calls short. He never understood why I distanced myself, but I no longer felt the need to explain. Both Christy and I eventually stopped referring to Harry as our dad. Christy even omitted him from her wedding. John maintains contact, as his experiences with Harry weren't as negative. Today, Harry still lives in the same city, but thankfully, our paths have never crossed. I've found peace in knowing I've moved on from the emotional toll of his neglect. And let's not forget the man who claimed to want children so badly ultimately showed he was unworthy of the role. Story 3. I'm a business owner in another country with very strict libel laws. If you say something bad about someone, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If it costs them money, they can sue you. It's the law in my country, and people get sued for it a lot. Just to give an example, if you are a man and you are cheating on your wife and I tell your boss, "This man is cheating on his wife," and your boss fires you, you can sue me because you lose your job because I told your boss. Even though it is true that you are cheating on your wife, stupid law, I think. If not true, I understand, but if true, why illegal? Anyway, my country is not perfect. So I own a restaurant, and my restaurant is very successful. I try to take care of my customers, and I'm always at my restaurant making sure my staff is doing a good job. I also always have events and parties. This, I think, helps my restaurant be successful. So not too long ago, I moved my restaurant to a better location, and shortly after, the restaurant owner across the street started to threaten me. She said I was telling people she had illegal people work for her. She said I told people she was selling drugs. She said I was saying she was ripping people off. I didn't know any of this. I don't even know her. I am busy. I have a restaurant, a family, and a normal job too. Then one day she sends me a message and says I need to pay her $25,000 or she will sue me. I need to pay the $25,000 because it is less than what the court would make me pay. I'm angry. I don't know why I need to pay $25,000 for something I didn't do. I think she was just mad at my success. My partner, who is American, told me I should speak to a lawyer. It was very stressful. I just want to do business and live a happy life. I don't want to fight over stupid stuff. But after a few weeks of her texting me and demanding I pay her money, I went to a lawyer. My lawyer told me that I could sue her for blackmail, and she could sue me for saying bad things about her. I told my lawyer, I didn't say anything good or bad about her. I don't even know her. If my lawyer says that's fine, then that's fine because she will have to prove I said bad things about her. And if I didn't say anything bad about her, then she can't win. But I can prove she tried to blackmail me. If she wants money out of me for saying bad things about her, she needs to sue me, not blackmail me. So I sued her. It took a long time, a very long time. Over 1 year, in fact, lots of paperwork, back and forth, waiting, very stressful. I was pulling out my hair. I'm just glad my boys keep me happy and focused. And then the day comes when we go in front of the judge. The judge said that she can't prove I said anything bad about her, and since she can't prove I said anything bad, she gets nothing. The judge then told me that I needed to get paperwork showing how much money I paid my lawyer. I was smart, and I brought it with me. My lawyer was very expensive. The judge then asked how much money my business made. I told the judge, and I also brought proof. The judge then ordered her to pay 10% of my whole year's money because she was trying to blackmail me, and that is not okay. 10% was a lot of money, a lot more than the $25,000 she had to sell her restaurant to pay me. I was so happy, but you see, she had a problem. She couldn't sell her restaurant. No one wanted to buy it because many people say my restaurant put her restaurant out of business, so why do they want to buy it? When they give her a price, it is a very low price, not enough to pay me or give her enough money to do something else. So I told her, let's make a deal. You give me your restaurant, and we say everything is even. She said that's too much money, so I promised to pay her a little bit every month as a rent, and she agreed because she had no choice. So I bought her restaurant. I got it for a very good price because she had to pay me and she had no money. In my country, if a judge tells you that you have to pay something and you can't pay it, one day they will send you to jail. So I took her restaurant and turned it into a restaurant, which is also doing well. Now I have 2 great restaurants, and I'm happy again. It was a very stressful 18 months. I didn't want to fight her. I don't know why she tried to fight me. I think she was just mad. She was always mad and mean, which is why I think no one liked her. Story 4. I have a 10-year-old son who is a semi-ambulant wheelchair user. He has a medical condition that makes walking difficult, and as he grows older, it becomes more challenging. He can walk short distances, 10-12 steps, but experiences pain afterward. At home, he uses a scootboard, a square skateboard with caster wheels on each corner to move around, and outside, he relies on his wheelchair. Despite his limitations, he is incredibly independent and unstoppable. My son is also very social. He loves interacting with his specialists and knows all the nurses by name, including their nicknames. He's well known in our local area, and shop employees often recognize him. His wheelchair is not a typical gray hospital chair. It's electric blue with colorful features like Pokemon-themed wheel covers and animal stickers on the armrests. The armrests flip up, resembling wings, giving the wheelchair a very personalized touch. Today, we had our monthly pediatrician appointment. We've been seeing the same doctor since my son was born, and he feels more like a family friend now. A recent storm had damaged the office, and repairs were underway, so the pediatrician had temporarily moved to a different room, which required climbing 5 steps. When we arrived, the doctor, a laid-back, surfer-type man in his late 30s or early 40s, jokingly offered my son the option to climb the stairs or have a piggyback ride. Naturally, my son chose the piggyback ride with a laugh. After checking with me, the doctor carried him up the stairs. After the appointment, my son was carried back to the waiting room and seated in a chair while the pediatrician spoke to the receptionist. I went to retrieve his wheelchair, only to discover it was gone. Around the corner, I found an 8-year-old boy happily wheeling himself around in it. I smiled and approached him. "Did you have fun wheeling around?" I asked. The child grinned and nodded. I explained it was my son's wheelchair and that we needed it back. The boy quickly hopped out, and I thanked him before returning it to my son. Everything seemed fine until a loud voice broke the calm. "What are you doing?" an angry woman yelled. "That is my son's wheelchair." "Actually, it's my son's chair," I began, but the woman, clearly irate, interrupted. "No, it isn't. My son saw it first," she shouted. At this point, my son stood up, looking worried, and walked a few steps toward me. I reassured him and asked him to sit back down, as the situation was escalating. The woman continued yelling, insisting her son needed the wheelchair. I calmly explained, showing her photos on my phone to prove it belonged to us. She dismissed the evidence, claiming it was a different chair and accusing me of lying. Thankfully, the pediatrician returned and intervened. He picked up my son, placed him in his wheelchair, and firmly told the woman, "This chair belongs to this child. It is not the practice's property. and we don't tolerate such behavior. Please leave." The woman exploded into a tirade, accusing me of ruining her appointment, but the doctor held his ground. Eventually, she stormed out with her son, leaving everyone in the waiting room stunned. The pediatrician apologized profusely, waived our fees for the day, and even handed my son a lollipop before scheduling our next appointment. After the appointment, we stopped at the supermarket for groceries. My son enjoys zooming around the store, gathering items from our list, and chatting with the friendly staff. Everyone knows him, and it's a social highlight of his week. While I shopped, he didn't return as quickly as usual. Thinking he might be chatting with an employee, I continued until I spotted him down an aisle. He was standing in obvious pain, holding onto a shelf for support, while another child sat in his wheelchair. The child's mother, another confrontational woman, was talking animatedly to my son. I hurried over and gently asked the child to get out of the wheelchair, explaining that my son was in pain and needed it. The mother refused. "He's having a turn," she snapped. "Your kid wouldn't even let him go up and down the aisle more than once before asking for it back. My son has a sore ankle, so we need this chair more than you do." I calmly explained that the wheelchair belonged to my son and was not a store-owned item for public use. The woman, however, dismissed my explanation and started wheeling her son away in the chair. My son, now in tears and shaking from the pain, cried out. I stepped forward and firmly stopped the woman. "No, you are not taking my son's chair." The commotion attracted the store manager and several employees. The woman tried to spin the situation, claiming her son had a sore ankle and needed the wheelchair. The manager, already familiar with my son and me, immediately sided with us. "This wheelchair belongs to this child," he said firmly. "It is not a store item. Please return it immediately." The woman refused, insisting it was a store wheelchair. At that moment, 2 police officers happened to walk in. The manager explained the situation to them, and the officers confronted the woman. When she still refused to return the chair, one officer warned her she could face legal consequences. Eventually, the wheelchair was returned, and the officers escorted the woman out of the store. Once the situation was resolved, the manager brought us to his office to help my son calm down. Staff members brought him water, and he was able to take his pain medication. By the time we left, the store had bagged our groceries, checked them out for free, and even included some special treats for my son. While the day was exhausting, I was grateful for the kindness and support we received from both the pediatrician and the supermarket staff. My son, despite everything, remained his cheerful and resilient self. Story 5. To begin, my sister-in-law has 4 children, a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old son, a 7-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old daughter. In May 2022, my sister-in-law was caught using credit cards belonging to our husband's grandparents, spending a total of $21,000 over the course of 4 months. She was ordered to pay $8,000 in restitution, but managed to avoid full accountability by claiming she wasn't responsible for all the charges. Many of the expenses were for everyday items such as gas, food deliveries, and fast food. In October 2022, I received a credit card in the mail with a $15,000 limit, which I had not applied for. Additionally, a PayPal credit account had been opened in my name. Thankfully, I was able to close both accounts without any financial losses. However, when I contacted the credit bureaus, I discovered that my sister-in-law's address was linked to these inquiries. The following month, we hosted Thanksgiving at our home, but I refused to allow her inside. My husband owns a trucking business, and we have personal and business assets to protect. I was already convinced that she had committed identity theft against me. As a result of this decision, my sister-in-law refused to let her children attend Thanksgiving with the rest of the family. Sadly, this turned out to be their grandfather's last Thanksgiving, as he passed away the following month. For most of 2023, my sister-in-law kept her fraudulent behavior outside the family. She continued engaging in theft and fraud at several of her jobs, but there were no direct incidents involving us or other relatives. last month. However, we discovered that the grandmother's savings account had been nearly drained. My sister-in-law had written and cashed a $5,000 check payable to herself from the grandparents' checking account. Additionally, she had taken credit and debit cards linked to their accounts and accumulated charges totaling $41,000. To make matters worse, she had been paying her court-ordered restitution using funds from these accounts. This time, she was arrested. She is currently out on $500 bail, awaiting her next court appearance on Wednesday. I'm unsure who paid her bail, but I suspect it was my brother-in-law. Adding to the situation, my brother-in-law recently brought me a stack of junk mail addressed to me at their current residence, a location I've never lived in. This is likely a result of her past inquiries involving my name, but my brother-in-law refuses to acknowledge this possibility. Despite all this, my mother-in-law continues to provide financial assistance to my sister-in-law in order to maintain a relationship with her grandchildren. This includes paying some of her bills and giving her gas money. For my part, both my sister-in-law and, more recently, my brother-in-law remain unwelcome in our home. However, we still make an effort to spend time with her children, as they are not responsible for their mother's actions. Story 6. Back in the early 2000s, I began to suspect that my wife was hiding something from me. At the time, our two kids were about 4 and 6 years old young, but old enough to share details about their day. They frequently mentioned spending time at their grandparents' house, which wasn't unusual in itself. However, since her parents lived 90 minutes away, making the trip 2 or 3 times a week seemed excessive, especially on days when my wife wasn't working at her part-time job. When I asked her about it, she denied anything unusual. However, she was never a convincing liar, and her evasiveness made me even more suspicious. I started tracking the mileage on her car and discovered she was driving an extra 400 miles per week. Clearly, something was going on. One day, I sat down at the computer and noticed she had left a sticky note with her AOL password written next to the keyboard. Unable to resist, I logged into her account and read her emails. There, I found exchanges between her and a close college friend discussing her ongoing relationship with an ex-boyfriend from high school. The emails included disparaging comments about the man's wife, mocking her weight gain after having kids. I printed the emails and kept them as evidence, but I wanted more concrete details. A friend of mine who worked as a police officer recommended a private investigator he knew. Enter Ron, who turned out to be incredibly skilled. I hired him, providing the emails and everything I knew about my wife's activities. Within a short time, Ron uncovered the full extent of her actions. His report detailed how my wife would drop off the kids at her parents' house, meet up with the man for lunch, and then spend a few hours with him at a rundown motel. She would then pick up the kids and head home as though nothing had happened. Armed with this information, I hired a divorce lawyer. Having grown up in a household scarred by my own parents' infidelity, I was determined not to let my children endure the same pain. I also asked Ron to dig deeper into the man involved, whom I'll call Bob. Ron delivered once again. I learned that Bob was married with 3 children, worked as a vice president of sales at his father-in-law's company, and lived in a house owned by his in-laws. With all this information in hand, I was ready to take the next steps. On the same day my wife was served with divorce papers at her workplace, Ron met with Bob's wife to share everything he had uncovered. I believed she deserved to know the truth, and it was up to her to decide what to do with the information. While my wife's infidelity had little impact on our divorce proceedings, the revelations had a profound effect on Bob's life. According to publicly available court documents, Bob's wife took swift action. She emptied their joint bank account, took the kids, and left him. When her parents found out, Bob was fired from his position at the family company. Since they owned the house he lived in, he was also evicted. What followed was a tumultuous divorce, with plenty of court battles and personal conflicts. At one point, an argument between Bob and his wife escalated, leading to her brother stepping in and breaking Bob's nose. Restraining orders, police reports, and even jail time were part of Bob's downward spiral. Eventually, Bob left the state. I haven't been able to find any trace of him online since. Meanwhile, his ex-wife did well for herself, taking a job at her father's company and later taking over when he retired. As for me, the divorce was straightforward. My ex-wife and I managed to co-parent civilly, keeping our interactions limited to matters involving the kids. Now that they're both adults, I no longer have any contact with her. I don't harbor hatred toward her, but my concern for her extends only to the fact that she is the mother of my children and important to them. Looking back, the decisions I made protected my children from a chaotic environment and allowed me to move forward with my life. The experience was difficult, but it ultimately reinforced the importance of standing up for oneself and ensuring a stable future for those you care about. Story 7. Years ago, I worked in the hospitality industry, specifically at a hotel with a strict policy requiring at least one staff member to be on site 24/7. My role was a mix of part-time front desk duties and relief for the night audit, a job that was both exhausting and unpredictable. I often didn't know when I'd be working, and 16-hour shifts were not uncommon, especially when the main night auditor called in sick. One of my middle managers had a habit of stirring up trouble for their own entertainment. While I only had to deal with them 2 to 3 times a week, thanks to my night audit shifts, their antics were still frustrating. They were also notorious for sleeping in and frequently arriving late in the mornings. Despite my personal dislike for them, I maintained professionalism, handing over my nightly reports and clocking out promptly to avoid unnecessary conflict. One morning, after a graveyard shift, I was awakened at 11 and by a phone call summoning me to a disciplinary meeting. The meeting was to include the middle manager and the general manager, who was my manager's boss. Half asleep, I asked why the meeting was being called and was informed it was due to my excessive use of overtime. I explained that I had worked through the night and needed rest before my next shift, requesting to attend the meeting later in the day. They refused and insisted I report to the hotel within an hour, threatening to add insubordination to my record if I didn't comply. Reluctantly, I got dressed, climbed into my car, and made the 30-minute drive to the hotel, trying to figure out how to explain the overtime reflected in my paychecks. As I drove, I remembered the middle manager's chronic lateness over the past month. That realization woke me up fully, and I arrived at the meeting cheerful and ready to defend myself. My positive demeanor seemed to irritate both the middle manager and the general manager. The middle manager launched into a tirade, accusing me of abusing company time. I listened calmly, letting them vent. Soon after, the general manager followed with a more composed but equally critical lecture about how my overtime was costing the company money, emphasizing that, as the night auditor responsible for the hotel's financial records, I should have known better. When they finished, I responded calmly, agreeing that overtime should be managed responsibly. I then suggested that we review my punch times alongside the staffing schedule and the clock in times of those relieving me. I explained that I always remained on site until the next staff member arrived and had been properly briefed, as per the hotel's policy of maintaining round-the-clock staffing. They reviewed the records, and the truth became clear. My shifts showed a consistent 3 to 5 minute overlap with the next staff member, adhering to policy. However, the middle manager's clock-ins revealed a different story. They were routinely arriving an hour or more late for their 6 a.m. shift, often clocking in around 7 or even 7:30. The general manager looked furious, and the middle manager's smug expression vanished. The meeting ended with the general manager acknowledging the situation, stating that I would be reimbursed for my time spent commuting to and from the meeting as well as the meeting itself. The write-up was dropped in light of the new information. Although the middle manager continued to make my life difficult, they never gave me trouble about overtime again. Interestingly, they also started arriving on time for their shifts, clocking in promptly at 6, and while my paychecks became smaller without the extra overtime, I finally got more sleep and avoided the stress of heavy morning traffic after my shifts. I knew my paychecks were larger than usual due to the overtime, but I didn't complain. Hotel jobs often pay slightly above minimum wage, even for night shifts, so the extra cash was a blessing despite the sleep deprivation. When the meeting was called, I saw an opportunity to defend myself while also addressing the middle manager's lack of accountability. In the end, I protected my position and ensured fair treatment, all while exposing the manager's unprofessional behavior. Story 8. My female, 30s work at a factory that builds parts. My role is in quality control, which means I work closely with engineers, though I am not one myself. Also, for the record, I am not a morning person. I work the second shift because it takes at least 2 cups of coffee for me to be fully functional and pleasant, even on a good day. Unfortunately, this was not a good day. My shift typically starts around 3 p.m., but for this particular week, I was coming in at 9 a.m. to work with Jeremy Male, 70s, not his real name, to train for a certification. Jeremy is the only other person in the building with this certification. He's a soft-spoken older gentleman who probably should have retired long ago, but chooses to work because he gets bored at home. He only speaks when he has something important to say, which makes him the ideal companion for my caffeine-deprived mornings. Now, let me introduce Barry Male, 40s, also not his real name. Barry is an engineering technician, not an engineer, and he doesn't hold an engineering degree. Despite this, he carries himself with the confidence of someone who believes they are the smartest person in the room. Barry is pompous, condescending, and loud. He has a habit of going on tangents and will talk at you rather than with you. He overestimates his likability, often cornering people in hallways to brag about his accomplishments. In short, Barry is the last person you want to encounter at 9 a.m. On Tuesday, after I had already been at work for 6 hours, Barry came into the room just as I was trying to clarify an unclear blueprint dimension. I asked a coworker for help, but Barry overheard and decided to insert himself into the conversation. What followed was a 45-minute lecture on high school geometry, complete with comments like, "Now, you don't have to remember this, but I do," and "Don't worry, you'll never need to know this." I didn't need the lecture, nor did I ask for it, but Barry was determined to make it a teaching moment. It took all my self-control to stay silent. By Wednesday, I was back at work with Jeremy, learning the ropes for the certification. A few hours into the shift, I needed to use some equipment across the room to take a measurement. Barry approached and made an offhanded comment like, "Look at you, trying to learn new things. Do you need help with that?" I politely declined his offer, but that didn't stop him from trapping me in a 30-minute conversation about calibration. Thursday arrived, and I was more zombie than human, clutching my coffee as if it were a lifeline. I had no patience left for interruptions or unnecessary interactions. My plan was to beeline straight to Jeremy and get to work. In my half-awake state, however, I accidentally bumped into Barry. Mumbling an apology, I tried to move on, but Barry stepped back and started a conversation. What followed was a comedic exchange. Barry: "Oh, that's okay. What are you doing here?" Me, in a tone reserved for small children: "I work here." At this point, Jeremy and the other guys on shift started laughing quietly. Barry: "Well, yes, but what are you doing here?" Me, still deadpan: "Working." The laughter grew louder. Barry: "Well, what on?" Me: "Work." At that, someone snorted, and all attempts to laugh quietly were abandoned. I stood there, staring at Barry in silence until he eventually shrugged and walked away. While I didn't intend to escalate things, the interaction bought me a couple of blissful months without Barry's interruptions. He now avoids me in the hallways and steers clear of my workspace entirely. Sometimes, a little humor and deadpan delivery are all it takes to reclaim your peace at work.